they want to see you in New York. You're auditioning for Michael Greif, the lead producer, Pasek, Paul, Lackamore, Levinson, Tara Rubin's assistant, and they'll fly you down and you audition the next day. And I was like, okay, that's a great story.
After you've rejected them? After you've already rejected them?
Yes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to After Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater from the comfort of my car. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we have a very special guest. If you've listened to our podcast from the very beginning, you'll know that we are huge fans of this actor. So please welcome Robert Markus to the podcast.
Hello.
It's so nice to have you here. We've seen you in so many things, and we have basically said, I feel like, Steph, over the course of the last 3 years, how many times have we said we need Robert on an episode?
Many times. So we're very happy that just all worked out. How's the summer going? You're almost nearing the end of a Stratford festival season, 2/3 of the way-ish, maybe?
Yeah, 2/3-ish. I think we have two months left. So we've got all of September and all of October. So I think it works out to be 40 more Chicagos.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot, but also not a lot at the same time.
I know, it's strange because you're usually doing 8 shows a week. And then when you're only doing 4 in rep, you're like, oh, we only do 100 of these? And at first you think you're like, oh, 100, that's not many. And then you do it and you're like, oh, feels different.
Yeah, it's typical because, you're normally double cast in another show, but this year, not so much. Or is Chicago the only show that's not double cast, or I don't know?
I think there might be another one that's double cast. We not double cast. We have one actor, Steve Ross, who plays Amos Hart, is also in The Miser. So he opened.
No offense, but he was the star of Chicago to me.
Jen's in the other room. Be careful.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry.
And Jen, obviously, we talked about her a lot in our Chicago episode too.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. You just got married this summer. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
For a honeymoon, you co-star with your wife in Chicago.
That's the address. So hopefully we're doing a honeymoon in the new year. But
we'll have Italy tips for you. So
we love Italy.
Really? Have you guys been?
Yeah, we did Rome and Naples.
Beautiful. Nice.
Yeah.
So before we get more into Chicago, we always start our interviews off by asking our guests, what is your earliest memory of theater?
It was a community theater production of Puss in Boots. My dad used to take me to community theater, and there would be pop songs with a made up script, and it would be mostly UBC students. So we'd see Jack and the Beanstalk and Puss in Boots, and we'd drive 45 minutes to this small little theater in Burnaby. And he would take me, and I would stay after, and I would ask for autographs. I'd be like, Dad, I got a Puss in Boots autograph. My voice was much higher back then, but that's
the beginning of the stage door experience, basically.
Exactly. Totally.
I don't know about Stratford, but have people stage doored for you? Has that been kind of that's kind of full circle moment. Yeah, if you were excited about getting Puss in Boots, and then other people excited about getting the same. It's exactly the same. Exactly. And my performance in Chicago is Puss in Boots, so it's great. That was the inspiration. Got it.
I mean, speaking of your performance in Chicago, obviously Chicago is such an iconic show. It was first announced for the 2020 Stratford Festival season. Obviously, we know what happened. But take us back to that time. How far had you guys gotten in the rehearsal process? Where were you before you heard that it had to be shut down?
We were a day before Sitzprobe. So Sitzprobe is the day where you sit down with the orchestra, and we call it Singers Christmas, when you finally meet the rest of your cast. And the rehearsal hall sat empty with all of the instruments in it for a full year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we were so close. And it was I don't get a feeling very often of, I can't wait for people to see this. And then we got a message from staff who's don't come to work today, though. Hopefully we'll do it one day.
Do you remember what date that was? Because you don't have to, but
I feel like it was a Wednesday. I'm not sure what the date was. And then we would have Zoom meetings with management and be okay, we're pushing it for a week. We're pushing a week. Okay, we can't push it anymore.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it like to pick it up again when you guys got to finally do it?
I was really excited, especially with this time I had a conversation with the designer and the director about bringing in a drag consultant. So to have that kind of support and that kind of knowledge attached to our production this time, I was really, really excited to have that extra support. And we had a great performer named Pearl Harbor from Toronto, Justin Miller, who like totally, it was like drag boot camp. Not actually, it was like having a drag mom. Like it was fantastic to learn about like the community reasons of this, body padding, makeup, societal issues with drag. Like it was it was like a drag bath.
I mean, that is something we were thinking about. Mary Sunshine is, if people don't know, you're playing Mary Sunshine. It's a production of Chicago. And some people don't know. I don't know if I knew because I'd seen the movie, and that the storyline of Mary Sunshine is kind of cut from the movie, played by Christine Baranski, so very different. So to approach playing that character, sometimes I would say semi-controversially. So if you're saying 2 years ago, you were kind of discovering that character for yourself, but this production, you had support in developing and honoring kind of the origin of that character. So how do you approach playing Mary Sunshine?
It's a really tricky one by asking for more support, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. Donna's not using the orchestration from the show during the reveal. It's carnival music, which feels really kind of gross. Like in the Broadway production, the wig and the costume is like revealed without it really being Mary's decision, and to make sure that identity isn't being revealed with permission and with ownership over that. And it was really nice to also have like trans consultation on this. It is a very troubled reveal, and like I think the time of guys in dresses needs to kind of go.
We've talked about that a lot on this podcast.
But I think that like the whole reveal is based on an art piece Justin did for High Performance Rodeo of revealing, not revealing, but taking off his drag in a very vulnerable way. Wow. And the framework was, how can we make this that the reveal is in order to save and uplift women rather than to impersonate or to what's the word I'm looking for? To take away from someone. It's an evolution of a person rather than I'm stripped away and I'm a man and I tricked you versus no, I have to do this so someone doesn't get killed again.
Right.
Oh, I love that, because I feel like hearing it from you, sometimes we would just like throw that character away because you just don't know the context of it, but to hear how much went into this for this production, like a whole different viewing point for that character, so that's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. There, I think you both talked about the Muni production too.
Yes.
Having casted as a woman, and in the program notes, it's Mary Sunshine is revealed to be a man.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's. I honestly think if Chicago continues, it's a part that needs to be tweaked because that stereotype it's just gone. You know what I mean? Like, we need to keep re-energizing that instead of just like having a brand new lens. And I think we did everything we can within the structure of the show, because you can't change lines, you can't change the show as a whole.
Right, you're very beholden to what's being licensed, and they're watching you.
Yeah, basically. And like, how do you make that the most respectful and the most intersectional in your approach, and also the most like inclusive of the voices that have been marginalized for so long.
Mm-hmm. I mean, speaking of Mary Sunshine, can we talk about your vocal range for a second? Because out of this world, the notes that you're hitting up there, we were floored when we saw the production. And I mean, we're always floored by your vocals, but in this, I don't think I've ever heard you sing that high before. What was it like to sing that high?
I always call it's the party trick that kind of gets me. But it was really great because we're working with the music director, Franklin, who's the head of music there. And it was very much a collaboration. And I was like, I want to add this little lick. It's not extra music. There's no extra. And I was like, and I was talking with the singing coach there, and I was like, what about Romeo and Juliet? And I've like kind of paraphrased of Gounod's Romeo and Juliet trills. And I'm like, I love the way this character has to express themselves with like in an aria.
Okay.
It's a musical theater, and they're like, nope, I'm going to do an operatic solo. I'm going to like express the extravagance of this character's thought process.
That's so fun. That's so fun. I mean, so this production of Chicago, everyone knows Chicago, whether they've seen the long-running Broadway show, the Oscar-winning movie. Did you notice anything new about Chicago when staging and putting on this production that you hadn't seen before?
So the only way Donna would get the rights to the show is if they did something totally different. So they weren't allowed to do Fosse, and they weren't allowed to replicate the movie or the Broadway production at all.
Right.
So for me, I love this version specifically because I feel like it's got both times I've done it, it's male directors, and this one's got a very clear female perspective about empowerment of these women rather than the male gaze on these women. And how these female characters are so brilliantly smart to use it, and so devastatingly talented that they're the ones holding our hands through this journey. They know what they're doing when they do those when they're doing the paper reveals, the headlines, those women have it in control, and that's super exciting. And especially to do a musical with a very clear female vision on the festival stage is
absolutely. Yeah, I love the way the characters are almost using their femininity, something that is, criticized, but using it to empower themselves and to get away with, in this case, a crime, but, to get away with, to something that they would be looked down upon for having, using that and twisting it and making it work for them. All the female characters, even using their femininity to, in some ways, let's say, manipulate Billy Flynn or manipulate these other characters who they think Billy Flynn thinks he's got power over all of them, but they're playing him the whole time. They're playing him. They're making him do what they want. So it is great. And that is interesting. I didn't think about, I don't know if we've seen Chicago with a female director before the way Donna has.
Yeah. No. She brought up an interesting idea of her whole idea is an Instagram filter. It's people are only revealing the colors and the versions of themselves they want. I'm that's why you do Chicago now. It's right. It's TikTok. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so much of a commentary on media. And now media is, it takes place in the 20s, but 100 years later, the way media has evolved since then. Yeah, it's very timely. It becomes more and more timely as time goes on.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Stratford, so you are a Stratford, I would say, mainstay at this point. How many seasons have you been a part of, and when did you know that you wanted to be a Stratford actor?
This is technically my 5th season. I saw Oklahoma in 2007, starring Dan Shamroy and Blythe Wilson, and I was blown away. I was like, what is this place? Why is this show so good? How are they moving a giant house on stage? I just could not comprehend it, and the caliber was so excellent that I think I was very young at the time, and I was like, I just want to do this. I would love to work here one day.
Mm-hmm. You've also collaborated with Donna Fior a few times now, and we just found out that she's taking a break from Stratford next season because she's got some other things going on in the U.S. She's a little busy.
Whatever.
But something that we've, I think, noticed about Stratford over the years that we've gone is that it's such a collaborative group of people. So we were just wondering what it's like to work with the similar people and similar teams year after year after year.
It is nice to have a shorthand, and what I love specifically about watching Jen as Velma is Donna knows what Jen can do, and Jen's like, okay, great. What if I hit a high note on this? Or Donna's like, okay, great. Can you hit a higher note than that? And then because of your relationship and because the incredible wealth of those talents, you can really do something kind of unusual and spectacular. I Can't Do It Alone is one of my favorite numbers. And to see a Velma on a tricycle hitting a high D flat with a grand battement, you're like, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean?
She's really funny that number. That number when everything is being thrown at her. Yes. We're like, how do you catch it all?
She didn't drop a prop. She didn't drop a prop once.
When Devin comes in to do the body.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, it's my it's musical theater gold to me. It's exactly what I want to see on stage. It's vaudeville. It's so great.
We were sitting right kind of next to that entrance area. So we're like, what's going on? I'm sure other people get a different view, but where it's coming from behind us a little bit, we're like, wait, who's in there?
I mean, now that we actually have you to talk about the mechanics of the theater, Steph and I are so interested about one, where Jen enters from the top.
We were like,
what is up there? We couldn't.
She'd been there the whole time.
It looks like it's nothing. It looks like it's basically the ceiling, and we were so confused trying to figure out like where is she waiting to come down.
Yeah. Okay, so that's called the cupcake. They call that, and that's actually the orchestra is like in a room right behind her.
Oh, we were trying to figure out where the orchestra was.
The orchestra's upstairs and it's kind of piped in, and then Franklin has like 16. Our music director has like 16 different cameras that you can kind of watch, which is great. And there's so many cameras on the stage, so if you're giving a cue, like everyone can see it. So you've got the cupcake up there, and then you've got right behind the like main thrust, there's a staircase that goes all the way down to the basement, and then you've got 2 entrances for the vom link.
Right.
And then the toaster pop, what we call it a toaster pop, but like the lift.
That's so it kind of goes like, it's kind of like a Y. So that's at like the base of the Y, and then it splits out to each side.
Okay. We spent like the entire car ride back from Stratford to Toronto trying to figure out where everybody was, because it seems so low to the ground, almost level to the ground, but it's not. It's just an illusion, I guess.
Oh, 100%. And where are those 2 like vom link entrances like that, on the other side is right underneath the seats, and that's where you wait, because you can cross in between either side.
So you're like under the audience. You're under us.
Under the audience.
Wow. Okay,
that's so fun. Next time we're in that theater, we're gonna be like, Robert told us.
You just go down there, like, is there a down
here?
Take us up to the cupcake.
It's so high. Oh, it's so high for me.
Yeah, it's high. It's high. So whenever I'm at Stratford, I'm like, it seems like summer camp. Everyone's having the time of their life. Is that an accurate assessment? Getting to go back year after year, see your friends, be like, what have you guys been doing since last time I saw you, since we closed?
I love Stratford, and I like being in Stratford, whether part of the festival or not. I mean, your employment here is never guaranteed. You always have to audition. So it's totally just based on what are the demands of each show. Jen has watched all of Gilmore Girls like twice. And I always think it's Stars Hollow.
Right.
Like you kind of know everyone. You go to the coffee shop. You've known the coffee shop owner Anne for 9 years. You were with her when she got this new building. You were with her when she like got her new espresso machine. She was the officiant for your wedding. And then you walk down the street and you see like 6 people you know, and like I love it. And because maybe 5 years ago, housing was really affordable here for people to buy, and so you had tons of artists flock here, whether they were involved at the festival or not. So it's the best that I can just like walk my 6 minutes to my friend's house, and then we do this thing called Christmas Crawl, where you spend 45 minutes at everyone's house, and then you leave, and then you go to the next person's.
Oh, that's so fun!
Every house has like an appetizer and a drink, and you just like go through the snow, just chilling with your
fun.
Chocolate. It's that part is absolutely lovely.
Oh my God, wonderful. Steph, should we do this here?
Should we do this in Toronto? We don't live close enough.
I know we don't.
Close enough to you. I don't live close enough to you. So describe to us, let's say a day off. Describe to us what's like a day off in Stratford.
A day off in Stratford. Okay, so tomorrow, what will I do? All right. So wake up, feed the dog. It's important.
Obviously.
Have coffee, chilled coffee, usually in here or outside. And
then chilled coffee?
Sometimes chilled.
Okay.
Usually just chilling coffee, but I also do love chilled coffee. And then we'll take the dog for a walk. And like one other thing I love about Stratford is there's so many trails. So we'll like take him to the TJ Dolan Trail, walk around for like an hour, come back, go see a friend, go downtown, grab a coffee. Sometimes circle for lunch is like the best.
We should be taking notes.
Circle.
Yeah. Next time we come, we're coming. Yeah. Okay.
So good. And then it's kind of like a make dinner and chill. Like we're not doing a whole lot just because Jen is doing a lot in Chicago. So it's as chill and calm as possible.
Sure. That makes sense. So then a show day, what's the routine on a show day then?
Oh, we'll treat it like a matinee. So I get up at 9, coffee, walk the dog, drive Jen to the theater. Jen gets there an hour before I do because she's got physio, flight test, and full dance warm up.
Sure.
I have to shave as close to the show as possible. Get to the show an hour beforehand, start gluing my eyebrows, doing a full face. I share a dressing room with Steve, so Steve, who plays Amos, so we'll chat for like an hour. And then Dan always visits at the half. Jen, the pre-show is Steve Ross has this box of angel cards. On them is like a word of something that like kindness or vision. And so Jen comes in, takes a card, Dan takes a card, I take a card, Steve takes a card, do the show, go home, let the dog out, start dinner. It's 8:00, you're in bed.
You know what? Sometimes going to bed at 8:00 is just fine. So I feel like living the dream.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a while to wind down too, right?
Totally.
Sure. It's a high octane show.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then you're like, okay, so I need to just chill a little bit.
Okay, let's switch gears now a bit, still with Stratford, but last summer we saw cabarets outside in the festival tent, which was great. It was so exciting to just be in an audience again for the very first time. We saw Why We Tell the Story, which Steph and I were obsessed with. It was so good. We wanted to get out to see Play On, but we couldn't get back out to Stratford to see it. But to talk about Why We Tell the Story first, this is a cabaret that was about the Black experience in musical theater, and you were the only white performer in the cabaret. What did you see your role as in that show?
I actually asked specifically, I'm like, why do you want me? And he was like, I really want the voice of allyship. And the relationship of like interracial relationship and how that is challenging at times, and how can allyship add and be added to that story, basically. So I was curious too, and Markus and I had lots of chats, and that's why a lot of the material selected was to kind of focus on that. And then he's like, do you have any ideas for any other material? And I was like, yeah, there's this great song from Memphis, and it's sung by a 65-year-old woman singing about her son. I think we can make it work. And I sent it to Markus, and he's like, yeah, I really like this song, let's add it.
I actually did see Memphis on Broadway, so when I was there, I was like, I did.
Like, vaguely familiar.
And I was like, this sounds familiar, but there's something off.
100%.
What was one of your favorite songs to watch your fellow cast members performing that song?
Honestly, like, that was an embarrassment of riches, and
absolutely,
those people were also so lovely. Like, lovely. That whole process was so cup filling, I refer to it as. Okay, there's so much.
You have to pick. You can't cop out.
Can I choose?
We have an answer.
Oh, can I choose one for each person?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's a bit of a cop out, but we'll allow it.
Summertime.
Okay. Incredible. Vanessa, I'm Here. You can't.
Yes.
Correct.
Old Man River. Like, that is like, when I hear that song, I was like, that's the voice it was written for. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, our answer is They Live in You. I have never heard a performance like that in my life.
So good.
We were crying like halfway through that song because his voice is so rich and so beautiful, and it was the best version I've ever heard of that song.
And he crafted that show when we did it with so much care. Like, he cared so much, and it was such a wonderful group. Franklin music directed that as well. Mm-hmm. And it was just a wonderful little like twinkle of an experience.
As an audience member, it felt very intentional, and it felt very well crafted. Like, you could sense that it was very intentionally put together, and you felt like you were in good hands as an audience member. You knew where they were leading you. A funny story I have is we saw the 7 p.m. and we'd seen kind of the 11 a.m. Cabaret. So we were kind of hanging out around Stratford, and we walked by the tent while you were doing your 3 p.m. show. And I was like, is that Aida? I was like, so our ears are like up at the tent. We're like, what are they singing? What are they singing? And it was Aida. And so when we got to like really hear it, it was very exciting. It was great.
Oh yeah. And Vanessa's a too. She's so easy to, I'm very fond of all of those people.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And then you got to go behind the scenes for Play On, which you curated, music inspired by Shakespeare, which is very on brand for Stratford. Tell us about the curating process, and is this something that you would like to do again?
I loved doing it, and it was nice to be on the other side of the table, and also to be like, okay, so how can I make these artists' experience be joy? and full of joy? And how can we create a process that is like another cup filling room? You know what I mean? Like you leave not tired after doing a 4-week run. You're like, oh, I'm inspired to do more. Mm-hmm. I collaborated with Julia and James, who run Shakespeare Bash, and we got set up on a blind date. We got asked to on the Zoom chat with the festival, and they were like, "We'd like you to do this." And I was like, "Hi, I've never met you before." We got along super well. They were invited to our wedding. Like we liked them a lot. We liked them a lot. And it was another really great. I was fortunate to work with a few artists that I'm familiar with already to be able to tailor it to their strengths.
Right.
And to choose music that I'm like, oh, they're going to be fantastic on this, and to adjust appropriately. So they also felt really good about it. Mm-hmm. Another really wonderful group of artists that I think felt a really lovely little ensemble doing it. And it's fun. Some of the music was like kind of silly. Like we did this early 2000s, like punk ska song called Billy S about a girl complaining about having to do a Shakespeare homework. And it was fun, and we gave it to Jacob and Gabe, and they made it like super punk. We had so much fun, and we did a Brush Up Your Shakespeare, but we had the 2 female identifying cast members do it, like as a commentary on men's idea of women, and to be able to kind of reclaim that song that is kind of not great. You're like, I've had this garbage said to me. This is trash.
That's so much fun. I wish Stratford would do more of these cabarets. I want him to come back. I loved being outside.
Yeah,
because the weather is beautiful. It was like the sun was like setting during that 7 p.m. show. So if anyone's listening, Stratford, do more.
Yeah, exactly. Outdoor concerts. Yeah,
outdoor concerts. It was so much fun to be outside and to kind of like a slightly more low key version of what you're seeing in the main theaters. So that's my petition, I guess. Do more.
I'm voting for you for.
Yeah, I'm coming in next season. So I don't know if you can answer this, but it's already been announced what next season musicals will include Spamalot and Rent. Do you think we're going to see you next year, or can you say anything? You don't know? Okay.
Put it in your letter.
Okay. We also want to see Robert.
We want to. Well, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but I would love to see you as Mark Cohen in Rent. So I
would love to play that part.
Right.
Like I would love to play that part. But you never know.
For sure. Who knows?
We'll add it to our email.
Dear Stratford Festival.
Exactly. Let's talk a bit about the pandemic. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, but as you mentioned earlier, Stratford canceled the season of Chicago, and Here's What It Takes for musicals. We did talk to Vanessa a couple years now about this on an episode of our podcast. What was it like in that time? You said for Stratford, but Here's What It Takes, and we still don't really know if that show will ever happen. I don't know. Like we loved one of the songs that was released from it. I feel like, Steph, you had an obsession in an episode one time.
Was it on Q? Did
yes.
You perform it on Q? Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the rest of it. And
here we are, still waiting to see the rest of it.
That's what it was.
That's all there is so far. Okay, that's fine too.
That's all there is.
Had you guys been in a rehearsal process for that very much? Or was it like
only in like maybe 2-3 weeks?
Sure.
Oh, wow.
And it was still very early. Like we were getting pages of rewrites.
Right. Because it was original, and Stratford had never done an original musical on the main stage before. Is that right? Okay.
I think it was. What theater we were supposed to be at? We were supposed to be in the
Tom Patterson.
Yes. Yeah. And so it was going to be the first like new show at the Tom Patterson.
Right.
Yeah, and I have no idea what they're doing with it. Like I honestly have not heard.
Okay. Hopefully one day we see it. So what were the emotions of that canceled season? Like, take us through the journey.
It was hard. I think the thing that upset us most was we were going to have to postpone our wedding because that was married in 2020. And so when we lost our jobs, we're like, oh, this affects an entire life in a year. It was definitely rough, but also being able to be in Stratford and to be able to see friends walkable like outside and to be like, I'm seeing 5 people, you're one of them, you know what I mean? Was a huge lifesaver, I think.
Right. Something else that came out of the pandemic was the up close and musical series that Stratford did for Stratfest at Home. I will recount exactly what happened when I watched your up close and musical. I watched it live when they did the premieres of it happening, and I texted Steph and I was like, "What are you doing right now? You need to turn this on," because Robert Markus is singing poetry, and we had recently had Britta Johnson on for an episode. We love that song, and then when you sing the joke. Best version of that song we've heard. We loved it so much. Steph immediately turned it on, watched Up Close and Musical.
I was washing dishes, if you want.
Many times.
You're like, the joke is on now.
Just crying while washing dishes. So that lives now, I believe, still on Stratford's website, Stratfest at Home. And I'm wondering, obviously more digital and streaming theater became available within the pandemic. Is this something that you could see moving forward? Do you like the digital format? What are your thoughts on streaming theater?
I think when I think they were very, I really liked the digital content they created, especially for the cabarets. Mm-hmm. I think, and especially the one-person cabarets, I thought they were edited really well together, and it felt like a intimate, purposefully. It didn't feel like a performance that was just okay, we're gonna put a camera there, audiences all around. It felt like it was made for film, and I'm all about that. But also, on the other half, I'm I also like it when everything's recorded, because then I can watch Life After at the Goodman in Chicago.
Just
watch it all.
It's true. Although sometimes in Canada we just get they don't stream it here, so we are unfortunately trying to find a VPN to watch a show. It's a very hard process. So I would love for things to be available in Canada all the time. But yeah, I feel I watched a lot of digital theater in 2020, and I kind of miss being able to just put something on demand.
Yeah. I liked they did a really good recording of Alice for Soul Pepper too. The Bad Hats did a production of Alice in Wonderland, and it was really well shot.
I think that is kind of the key. Sometimes they're not well shot. It's expensive, absolutely. Sometimes it does feel like they've just put the camera, and sometimes you're okay, they've taken the time to say, what do we need to adapt for filming it for screen, because it's not the same medium and it looks different. So yeah, I think that is the key for sure. I definitely agree.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about Dear Evan Hansen a little bit?
Sure.
So we first saw Dear Evan Hansen when it opened in Toronto in March of 2019. You obviously played title character Evan Hansen, and you received a Toronto Theatre Critics Award as well as a Dora nomination. Steph saw it opening night, I feel off of a Student Rush lottery ticket.
Yeah, I did Student Rush. It was a last minute decision,
and texted me saying, wow, this guy playing Evan is really great. And then I had subscription tickets, and I went with my mom. I had seen it on Broadway, I guess a year before then. And same thing was wow, this Evan. And then we knew we were going together, and we sat second row and saw it with.
We saw every tear track coming
every
down.
tear, every tear, every
that's a lot of I'm so sorry.
That's the closest I think we've. That's the closest I've sat for that show, and it's a lot of tears, a lot of snot for everybody. But me too. I'm also crying,
it's a lot
so
of
it's
crying.
fine.
Yeah, we couldn't see your crying through our crying, so it was fun.
Yeah. But we, funnily enough, our second ever episode of our podcast was talking about the casting of Dear Evan Hansen, because that process seemed to be so long. It was a Canada-wide search for Evan. And what was that audition process like?
It was very, very strange. I sent in a tape in June when I was doing Rocky at a festival.
Right. Really similar characters, I think.
Yeah, the most.
Yeah.
Emotional and fragile teenagers. Riff-raff. One's an alien.
The core of them is. Yeah.
It was very, I would say, untraditional. So I sent in a tape. And they were like, okay, great. We don't need to see anymore. We're not interested. And I'm like, cool. And I was like, can I just come to callbacks and just get in the room? And my agent was like, absolutely not. They're not interested. I was like,
wow.
Okay. And so I auditioned for the festival, and was supposed to be to a season here. And then in November, Dan, who I'm working with, is like, hey, have you thought about resubmitting for Evan? And I was like, I don't want to. Like, I've got a season here. It's like I've already emotionally kind of moved on because I was really interested in it at the time. And then I got a call from my agent being like, the casting director in Toronto wants to see you. Will you come in and audition? It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, no one should have to sing Evan in the morning. And I was like, no, the boat sailed. Like, I don't want to leave this season that I'm supposed to do. And then I get a call from my agent being like, they want to see you in New York. You're auditioning for Michael Greif, the lead producer, Pasek, Paul, Lackamore, Levinson, Tara Rubin's assistant, and they'll fly you down and you audition the next day. And I was like, okay, that's a great story.
After you've rejected them? After you've already rejected them?
Yes. Well, my agent was like, the producer finally saw your video. And it didn't make it all the way to her. And she's like, they'd really like to see you for it. And I was like, okay, I'll go because it's going to be a great story. And I get to go to New York for a day.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I finished Rocky Horror. We closed. It was December 1st or December 2nd. We closed. The show ended at 4:00. 6:00 took a shuttle to the airport, Stratford to Toronto. Flight was delayed, obviously. Got in at like 12:30. Turnaround was like, first audition was at like 10:30 in the morning the next day for the associate. And I was like, okay. Tried to sing through it and I was like, this is impossible. It's 10:30 in the morning. And they gave me like a whole series of notes to like work on because they have associates on it that know that show forwards, backwards, and upside down. And then walked around New York for 4 hours, not knowing what to do with my like little carry-on suitcase full of polos.
Is that what you packed? Only blue polo shirts just for like...
You got to be on brand.
And a cast, obviously.
Yes.
You broke your arm to show up. I
fell off the plane. And went to audition at 3:00, opened the door, and there was someone like got off the elevator for the casting. There was a guy I knew, a friend of mine. I was like, you're here too. Went in. They all the production, all the creatives, like single file entered, and they were like, hello. And then they're like, your time is now. And then there's just a wall of people and Michael Greif on Zoom. So went in, did everything once, no redirects, like total presentational, like, can you do this or can't you?
Wow.
Staying through it, and I was like, okay, well, back to Canada. Took my plane back that night, and then the next day I had an offer.
Wow.
So then I guess, like, do you know if they had filled out some of the rest of the cast before? It was already done?
Right.
See,
months before.
We were under the impression, after seeing you in this, we were under the impression that it was like you first and then they had to fill everybody else out afterwards. But waited, like had found you, but like maybe we're searching around. I don't know what we thought, but not this.
I feel like I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you don't even know, but I feel like I was like, it's really late to be announcing the Evan. That's how I felt. I felt they have had a hard time finding Evan. And I don't know why. This is just an outsider person who's on the Broadway World Boards being like, what's going on? But it felt like, to me anyway, they were having a hard time finding their Evan. Because I know they wanted to cast fully Canadian.
Yeah. I think I was auditioning like 643 or something.
Wow.
And I found out that a friend of mine, Evan, who played Larry, went down to the Mirvish offices and were like, you need to see Robert for this. And that's what actually got me to the next, like, that's how the producer saw the video. Then I think they announced it like, I was on vacation. Like, we had planned a postseason. We were in Costa Rica. Like,
great.
So, like the day, so I found out I got the offer, and then the next day we were leaving.
Oh wow!
And I had to go on like radio silence. Wasn't allowed to talk to anyone. And then I was calling Stratford from Costa Rica, being like, "Please don't hate me. I have to do this." And they were like, "We totally get it." And they were so nice about it. Especially Donna. Donna was very, very supportive and sent me like a very sweet message.
That's one of the questions we had actually. Taking the role of Evan meant you couldn't do that Stratford season. Do you know who you were cast as? Can you tell us?
I was supposed to do Billy Elliot.
Okay, you're supposed to do Billy Elliot? Right.
Yeah.
I assume not Billy Elliot.
Yeah, you were playing Billy.
I am a fantastic ballet dancer.
We did see Billy Elliot and Little Shop that season. Yeah. Amazing.
So like, what is that decision like? You know, you as Stratford is somewhere you've been to multiple times before, and you kind of had to say no to that, or you had to almost quit that's like, what was that decision like?
Too, and it's a relationship that like I really like working with Donna, and I didn't want to jeopardize that because she's such a good. I think she's a fantastic director and a really wonderful collaborator to work with. So I called her personally, and then I wrote like apology letters. I wrote handwritten cards to casting producer Dawn. I think Donna. I talked to Dawn on the phone. I can't remember if I wrote her a card too, but I'm probably sure I did. And then maybe I think I did Anthony too, and Anthony was like, okay. I didn't want to damage that, and everyone was like, yeah, of course you have to do this. This is it's like musical theater Hamlet. Like, it's hard. Go. And I think the show made me a better actor, and hopefully it's Chicago's wealth is their loss.
I mean, to talk about the rehearsal process, did you guys go down to New York and train at all with the Broadway cast? Like, what was that experience like?
We rehearsed entirely in New York. I got there
amazing.
A week or 10 days beforehand, and we rehearsed in the studio where they normally rehearse replacements, and then it was the entire Broadway team. They were rehearsing other cast members for New York at the time. I think it was when Andrew was rehearsing. Go in. We never rehearsed together, but we were always there. Like, Michael would leave us a little early so we could do scene work with Andrew.
I mean, we saw the two of you sing together in that For Evan video.
Nice guy.
I love that video for when you guys are singing. And yeah, I mean, have you seen another Evan? Like, did you get to watch an Evan? Who did you see? Who was your Evan that you got to see?
I've seen it 3 times because the producer's like, come see our show. And I was like, sure. I saw Taylor Trench.
Great.
And then I saw Taylor Standby. What was his name? He was great. I can see his face, and I can't remember his name. He was really, really wonderful. And then I saw
Michael Lee Brown.
Yes, he was great.
Okay.
I saw Michael Lee Brown on Broadway.
Yeah, I really liked him. And then I saw Zach do it because I wanted to make sure that I was good for his last performance too.
Oh, almost as many times as me. I've seen it 4 times, so one more time for you.
But he's done it.
I know. A million.
So much crying at the end.
I mean, speaking of the crying, 2 shows, like an 8-show week, like, how do you, I don't know, from a matinee to an evening performance, like, get enough tears?
I never
had to, right?
Zach,
right.
Wow.
Oh, and we would have like a code. Like, if I was ever like really, I'm like not feeling great, I would always text him and be like, heads up, you're going to get a call in 2 hours because I don't have a voice today. And we were like, we had a really great communication between us, and he was really wonderful to work with, even though I didn't technically like work on stage with him.
Right.
So when the show was first announced, it was expected to run until at least September, and we thought the intention was for an open-ended run. The theater was blue. We were ready to go. And then unexpectedly to us, it was announced to close a few months early in July. When did you guys find out that was happening? What can you tell us about that?
We got 10 weeks notice, and technically they only have to give 1, like, or 1 or 2. It's 2 weeks notice. I think you get 2 weeks notice if you want to close a show. It's Toronto is a trickier market because it's not tourist based. It's like 85% subscription and people that live in Toronto, and 15% tourists. And New York is significantly higher. I think Evan Hansen is a hard show to see more than once, because you have to love the show so much that you want to see it over again, because it's not Come From Away that you're like, oh yeah, I want to bring my friends. I want to bring my grandma to see Come From Away, right? You're like, if you want to see a 17-year-old cry, go for you.
Even I can imagine for you.
I love it. Don't get me wrong, but like, I think that it emotionally it's hard to see. Like, my parents were like, we'd love to see it, and they were like, we can't see you go through. Like, we can't see you go through that again, because it's just so much. So I think that's hard, and I'm not sure if it's as familiar in Canada as it is in the States too.
Right.
It also did seem that on Broadway it had such an amazing opening, and then when it started to go on tour, people started to maybe not love the story so much. And I feel like over the course of the years that the show's been on, the storyline is still kind of like having issues. So it really seemed to not super resonate with audiences in Toronto. But I was always an advocate for, the music is so good, the talent, the whole cast here was incredibly talented. So I'm always an advocate for theater in Toronto. So it was really disappointing to us when it did close. Yeah.
I agree. And like, I remember we were doing, each person had to do like a makeup trial for the show. And they were like, here, just use this, see if it's it. But they were like,
you're not doing like full face.
Oh, like this one. Oh my God. But the makeup artist said, so how do you feel playing a villain? And I'm like, wow. Oh, okay.
That's how she saw it, or he saw it.
Yeah. And it was an interesting, it is like I the first time I heard it, and I heard like a bad ripped audio version of when they did it like arena stage, like years before it made to Broadway. And I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
But I think looking back, you're like, it is tricky to feel empathetically for a character that is lying so much, whether they have significant reasons for their own mental health or whatever to that lie up, but it is through deception.
Yes, I think some people go into it with like a very black and white view of it, and I've always seen it as every single person in the show is emotionally complicated, not just Evan. Not just Evan, but like I always think about like Jared and Alana. They're also kind of lying or manipulating or doing things for not like number one 100% good intentions. But yeah, I think a lot of people go into it with like a very black and white viewpoint of he's lying, so he's bad, or this is so they're good. So it's a little, I don't know.
Yeah. The first time I heard that, I was like, he's a villain?
You're like, oh, I didn't know that.
Whereas like I see it on the flip side of like, how can you not feel bad for this kid that's like pouring his heart out on stage?
And also giving their family hope. Like
totally. We always say, and it's a line in the show too, like everybody needed it for something. Everybody needed it for something. And I feel like we have gone to bat many times on this podcast defending like choices in Evan Hansen. But it is interesting because like even after we watched the movie last year, we're like, oh, this really has taken a turn and now he feels like a villain. So it's interesting seeing it in like different mediums too.
Yeah, I think the movie was slightly less successful than the stage version at like presenting his choices, let's say.
Yes.
And that's another show that I'm like, oh, it'd been really interesting to have it through the filter of social media. Because if the whole show is that text message or that video, like you see Evan through a lens rather than try to be potentially manipulative.
So did you have to get the cast sawed off during intermission too every day? Did it ever come close to cutting you?
God bless you, Greg. Love you.
What do? They stick a ruler in there and just kind of saw it off?
And then they use a little sawzall thing.
And then how long before the show do you have to get the cast on?
15, I think. 15 or 30, I can't remember.
That's so quick when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, and it's still a little wet when you start the first.
Oh, really? You start the show? So when Connor's like signing it, it's like, oh.
Hopefully it's dry by then. But like when you go in there for like, Evan Hansen, it's
and the New Balances. Can we talk about the New Balances?
Yes.
A great New Balance.
I feel like Jeremy Hansen maybe started the trend because now New Balance are so fashionable.
Right.
And they were his like uncool shoes that Evan was wearing, and now everyone's wearing a New Balance. So
it's true. There's also like there's many costume changes in that show, especially like in the final scene when you wear an entirely different costume for maybe 5 seconds. Love it.
Is there a favorite moment in that show? Well, talk about your favorite moment to sing and then your favorite moment to watch someone else do when you're in it.
Favorite moment to sing. I loved Words Fail because I always, don't get emotional, I loved Evan, Claire, and Steph. I loved that cast. They were wonderful, and I'm still close with a lot of them. Like I think I texted Evan earlier today. And then you would finish the show and Claire was like, I'm sorry, I didn't cry enough for you today.
Like I wasn't giving what you...
Yeah, and it was a really wonderful... I always thought of that show as an ensemble show. Like it really is. Like Evan can't be fantastic without a fantastic Zoe who's there for him as much as he is for her. And so that I loved Words Fail, and then going into Jess, who's a very close friend of mine, seeing her face is just a wonderful and just devastatingly tragic thing. And we became very close friends during that. What else are moments did I love? I loved listening to Jess saying that. So big, so small. Because I always thought it cost her so much to do it. What else did I love watching? Steph always sounded good.
Oh, her Requiem. So good.
So much of that cast ended up going on tour and continuing to do the show because it was an amazing cast they put together here. So it was so like wonderful to see that it wasn't the end of their performances in that show. So yeah, it was a great run, if short.
Good. Yeah. And there was also a part of me that's like,
yeah,
relief. Like I'm sad to say goodbye to it, but also I'm happy that I don't have to keep putting myself through this, as in like the emotional toll of that. And I texted Alessandro earlier today. He just bought a house. Like, how great is that?
I saw that on Instagram. It's very exciting stuff.
He was the star of the Dear Evan Hansen Instagram stories page. They did like cooking with him all the time. He got a like whole set of Le Creuset pots and pans. Like, man.
The secret of Alessandro is he looks like a 25-year-old man, but inside he's a 75-year-old Italian nonna.
Amazing. We can kind of sense
that. I'm so hungry. He used to call it so big, so huge. And it would be he would change the lyrics to him eating different foods.
That's amazing. That's so good. We've always admired your versatility, from Riff Raff to Evan to Mary Sunshine to Ross Petty's Pantos during the holiday season and so much more. It seems to us that you don't really have a type that you're cast in. So what's it like to step into such vastly different roles season after season?
I love it. I love shows where I can be entirely not recognizable. I think that's so exciting. For me, I love when you don't recognize who you're seeing and you're like, oh, but I saw that and oh, there were moments of this. Like, I think I love when you're totally taken away. Mm-hmm. And I like the extremes. I like the weird characters. Like, I like the ones that are a little off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then I guess in the same sense, like, it's kind of a vocal risk every time you step into a new kind of character too. So what's that like to like completely change your voice?
I love it. It's such a good challenge, right? And like, how does that voice also help with like physicality? Like for me, Mary Sunshine's all about her wrists, and she's always has a hanky. Everything is circular. And then with Riff Raff, the hands were always this. Like,
right.
And then Evan hands were always this.
Not by choice, obviously.
Yeah, by physical restriction. But I like the extremes, and I like the a little bit off. Like, I remember I always wanted to do Joseph as a kid. I was like, oh, I want to do Joseph. And then I did Joseph at Theater Aquarius, and I was like, I'm just sat in a loincloth the whole time. So cold.
It's cold, though.
It's cold, but then you can wear it for 3 minutes, and then you're like,
that's
well,
true.
Off to Potiphar, and you're like, okay, great. So I like the kind of strange extremes and more extended characters.
Yeah, that's super fun. We do have a game for you. It's a bit of a rapid fire. It's called Personality Test Drive. Okay, so your road trip cast recording. What are you listening to?
Road trip cast recording. Right now, I am listening to. I will tell you.
Oh.
Right now, I am listening to doodly doodly doo. I am listening to what's the Ride the Cyclone. That's the last thing I listened to.
Oh,
Ride the Cyclone. It's a great cast recording.
Great cast recording.
What is a dream role?
The first thing that came to mind with Joseph, and I was like, it's not Joseph.
Allegedly coming back. Allegedly coming to Toronto.
I don't really have dream roles anymore because for me, the most exciting things are like the stuff that always takes you by surprise. I do have two that would be really fun. Would be George and Sunday and Bobby and Company, just because they wouldn't have to learn another character name.
We saw, we were talking about Evan. We saw him in Sunday in the Park with George, like one of the last things we saw before the pandemic. But great, wonderful, amazing.
Mm-hmm. Pre-show ritual.
I choose a word or write something I want to work on for the show.
What is your miscast?
What is my miscast? Clara and Light in the Piazza.
Wow.
Oh, The Range. I think you can do it. I mean, we would say that Mama Will Provide was maybe a miscast for you, but
in many ways, but
but it was super fun.
Favorite song from a show that you didn't get to sing?
Favorite song that I didn't get to sing. What have I done? When the second you ask a question, I'm like, I have no idea.
Like, I've never been in a show ever.
Ever, first time. Favorite song in a show I didn't get to sing. What is Evan? Evan sings a lot, so there's not in there that I haven't sang. Music Man. You really stumped me.
I feel like that didn't seem that hard to me.
Oh, River Deep Mountain High from the Panto.
Okay.
Michael DeRose slayed it.
Wow.
Great song.
Yeah, great song.
If you were to step into a theater tomorrow, which of your previous roles could you still perform?
I could still perform. Rocky's probably in there. Yeah, probably Rocky. I feel like I'd be like, okay, sweet, give me 6 hours and I'll be fine.
The makeup would take the longest, I think.
Yeah.
Honestly, probably is a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
A lot of makeup heavy parts.
Movie you'd turn into a musical.
Movie I would turn into a musical. That's a really good one. There was one a little while ago that I was like, why isn't this? We thought we were talking about A League of Their Own should be a musical.
I feel like when we had Jake Epstein on, he also said that.
I agree. He said that. And then also, didn't I say that this might be in the works?
I think we found like a very old workshop, but nothing ever happened. So
yeah, do that.
Bring it back. Let's do it. What is your favorite costume you've ever worn?
Probably Riff Raff and Rocky Horror. Like, it was so nice to have a character that with like such an extended body, like whether it was a hump or long hair.
Favorite spot to sit in a theater?
First row balcony. Stellar. Love that.
Balcony.
Or like I'm a slightly off to the right center orchestra.
Yeah. Okay.
But if we're doing tech, find me first row balcony.
Sure. What is a special skill on your resume?
Like swimming.
Do you often have to use that special skill?
No. Probably countertenor singing. It got me my first job.
Oh, amazing. Favorite show that you've never seen?
Hadestown.
It's coming to Toronto.
I know, I want to see it.
Make a trek.
Which character that you've played is the most like you?
The most.
Riff Raff.
I just walk around like this. Most like me. Probably the Panto, because it was just a dude. It's probably not Mary Sunshine, and it's not quite Riff Raff, and it's not quite Dads from River City, so I don't know what.
As a Stratfest regular, what's your favorite Shakespeare?
It was Romeo and Juliet, based on the thing we did for Play On, which is to put A Case of You with Joni Mitchell into it, and it is freaking great.
Wow.
I think there should be a Joni Mitchell RJ. I'm putting it out there.
Like a jukeboxy style. Yeah. Okay.
There's already a jukebox, basically Romeo and Juliet. It would be hard to compete, I feel, at this point.
I think they've got a few musicals somewhere. No one's doing a musical of King Lear. I don't know why.
Wow. That would be interesting.
I don't quite see it. I'm not.
I can't visualize.
What is your guilty pleasure musical?
Guilty pleasure musical. I love Little Shop of Horrors. And there's another one that's actually more guilty. What is it? Guiltiest is There Life After High School by Craig Carnelia.
Okay.
I have never even heard of that.
Exactly.
This one's the guiltiest, obviously.
Yeah.
And then finally, a dream project to co-star with your wife.
Sunday in the Park with George would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That would be beautiful. That would be nice.
Yeah. Before we wrap up this episode, we asked you to come prepared with an obsession. So it is now time for our obsession of the week. right, Steph, what do you got?
Okay, I'm always shuffling on Spotify. That's just, you listen to a cast recording and then it starts playing things inspired by that cast recording. So a song that came up recently was a song called "Is This Not Love" from 12th Night the Musical. It's gorgeous. Shayna Taub. You know, we've been talking about her a lot because she's doing Devil Wears Prada, whatever's going on with that. She wrote the music and lyrics, but she also has this gorgeous voice, and she is singing this beautiful song, again, a musical based on a Shakespeare. I haven't seen the show. I've listened to the cast recording a bit, but this is the standout song. It sounds just like almost like a jazz standard. Like, it doesn't sound like it's from a musical, not in a bad way, but just absolutely gorgeous. I want to hear a million people sing it. I want to hear her sing it. I love it. It's beautiful.
Oh. All right, Robert, what's your obsession this week?
Side note, Sarah Farb sang that for a forum event a couple years ago at the Stratford.
Oh, really?
At the festival, and we all were this close adding it to Play On.
Really? It's stunning. It's stunning.
Current obsession, Ingrid Michaelson doing "If This Is Love" from the new Notebook musical.
Yes.
It's going to be good. And the recording is stellar. It's on Instagram. It's on the Notebook Instagram page. And great song, great vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm a sucker for a pop singer writing a pop-based musical theater too.
Yes.
I mean, speaking of movie musicals, my obsession this week is recently there's been some songs released from the upcoming Almost Famous musical, which is coming to Broadway in October. And my obsession this week is Everybody's Coming Together. I feel like there's been some mixed reviews on this song, but I feel like Almost Famous, one, what a perfect movie to musical adaptation. It's obviously a movie that sings. And number two, I feel like this is exactly what I thought this would sound like out of an Almost Famous musical. It's been a minute since I've seen that movie, but Steph and I were talking literally the other day about like a dream trip to New York, and Almost Famous is like at the top of our list right now to go and see it. So that's my obsession this week. Obviously a Tom Kitts score, never a bad thing. So I'm excited for Almost Famous to come to Broadway this season.
It's too much good stuff coming.
There's a lot of good stuff coming, hey?
Yeah. We don't think the Notebook is going to make it this season, though. I think it's too soon.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of competition for this coming season. And then they just started the rumors of Josh Groban doing Sweeney Todd.
Right.
I know. We've added it to our spreadsheet.
Yeah, we were listening. Okay, we're like, if we go in December, what do we see? And we had like 6 things to see, and we're like, it's not possible. It's not possible. You can't do it all.
Because obviously, Almost Famous is like top of list, but actually top of list is Merrily with like Daniel Radcliffe, Jonathan Groff, and Lindsay Mendez. Because
and it's like a Sondheim Renaissance, right?
Although Merrily is happening in Toronto with Yes Theatre.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So wow, and Alessandro tie in there too. So that will be exciting when that happens. I think it's early next year. So.
Yes. I feel like this not always happens, but we saw Little Shop in Stratford and then we went to New York and saw Little Shop in New York. So if we go and see Merrily in New York and then come back and see Merrily here.
Totally.
And spoiler, Stratford's Little Shop was better than the off-Broadway production.
Really? You liked it, hey?
Yeah. We loved it. We loved it.
It was great.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't there though, so.
No. You were busy. It's fine.
I was busy crying in front of you.
Yeah. Before we wrap up this episode, what's next for you post October 30th? What are you doing October 31st? What November 1st? Like, do you have anything planned for the rest of the year? Or are you just gonna like relax?
Honestly, hopefully go on honeymoon. That's like
amazing.
Number one.
Yeah.
There's still like a couple fires in the iron of like, oh, that'd be fun. I'd really like to just relax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of figuring out kind of what happens next and stories that are like, I'm like, oh, if I can go, yeah, that's a good time to tell that story now. That's what I'll go for.
Right.
Sure.
Where can people follow you if they want to follow you?
RJB Markus on Instagram.
Amazing. And if anyone wants to listen to our episodes, you can subscribe to our podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'd really appreciate it if you left us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. And you can also watch us here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Off2BOA Podcast with the number 2.
And thank you so much, Robert, for joining us today. It was honestly such a pleasure to talk to you and to hear so much about these characters that I feel like we thought we knew, but we actually knew nothing about at all. So it felt like a little bit of a lesson today.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, everyone is a villain, is what you should take away from this.
Everyone's being Todd.
Exactly.
Played by Josh Groban.
So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.